the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. This is the place where you get both a coach's and sports dietitian perspective on topics important to endurance sports, including nutrition, training, and how these impact and fit into your daily life both on and off the race course. Your host, Coach Justin, certified run and triathlon coach and owner of Tabula Rasa Racing, along with Coach Katie, a registered dietitian with a specialty in sports nutrition and owner of Fuel to Run. Here at the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast is where your journey begins. Welcome, everyone. So this is episode 9 of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. I'm your host, Coach Justin. I am on solo duty for this episode. Coach Katie had her marathon race last weekend, so she is on a bit of a family vacation, and we didn't think enough to pre-record the episode before she left. So you got me today, and today we're going to be talking about the role of the brick workout. So this kind of is more focused towards the triathlon endurance athlete rather than single sport. And so today is, it is June 2nd of 2025. And like I said, this is episode 9. So the topics that we're going to cover today is we're going to define what the brick workout is, what's the purpose of the brick workout, how and when does it fit into your training plan, what do you focus on during these types of workouts, and what are the potential risks and benefits of implementing this type of workout in your training plan. Feels kind of weird just kind of being here by myself and just talking to you guys. So I'm just going to jump right in. So a brick workout is a session where you are implementing multiple disciplines within the same training session. Is typically the way athletes typically use it will be for a bike and run brick, where you will bike first and then make a transition and then you jump right into a run. There are few instances where I've seen athletes look for like swim and bike bricks or swim and run bricks. So typically, like I said, they use bike and run. The reason that I'm actually going with this topic is I've seen in a couple Facebook groups, and one in particular is the Team Zoot, where I'm one of the team members for Team Zoot 2025. Talking about bricks, they're asking people are asking, what type of distances are you doing? How often are you doing them? And since I've seen this, and it's a topic that I kind of wanted to cover anyway, and with Coach Katie, she focuses on running. I'm more of the multi-sport athlete. So this is one where it tends to be kind of more in my wheelhouse. Yes, Katie has done a multi-sport event. I think she did a half Ironman. But this is one that I tend to focus on and one that I implement in my training strategies. So I've already gone ahead and I've defined this brick, and there seems to be, I want to say controversy, but there is some mixed opinions on the importance and utilization of this type of workout within the training plan. What I will say is, yes, I do use these types of workouts in my own training plan. I also use them in my athlete plans, but they are used for a very specific purpose, and rarely is that purpose focused on fitness gains. So what I will say is the purpose of the brick session can have multiple facets to it. The primary focus of a brick session, I believe, in my personal opinion, is more of a mental refinement, mental aspect of your training, um, and more of a race practice than it is for fitness gains. The reason that I say that is because brick sessions, the way that I implement them and the way that I use them, is more of a pacing practice, learning how to be patient off of the bike and onto the run. I I would also love to do swim and bike bricks, but they are a little bit more challenging to implement, especially if you don't have access to open water or if you don't like to swim in open water alone. Then it would require, finding others to kind of swim with you, or if you wanted, some kind of open water support. There's a lot more logistical planning that is involved with using a swim component in your brick. I have done it before in the past where I've gone into the pool and I've done a swim session and I've kind of laid out my gear outside of my car in the parking lot. And I effectively just do my swim, jump out of the pool, run, run out of the facility, and right to my car, and then jump onto the bike for a bike session. It's a little bit awkward. Others kind of look at you a little bit strange, but it is good practice. Going from that horizontal orientation where you're swimming and you're jumping right up into a straight up and down vertical orientation. You're trying to get your bearings under you, or you're trying to practice, quick stripping of wetsuits. If you jumped in the pool with a wetsuit and you did a short swim with the wetsuit, and then you're trying to learn on how to get that off quickly and effectively, how to make that transition onto the bike. So, in my opinion, you have the pacing that you're working on. The second is you're learning patience off of when you're coming off of the bike and starting on to the run. And to a certain extent, I think you might be trying to practice a little bit of the nutrition strategy, on how to make that move from fueling from the bike and on to a fueling strategy while you're on the run. Learning on trying to teach your body how to take in calories and absorb that nutrition while you're kind of like, jostling, and your body isn't as stable as it is on the bike, where you have a little bit more freedom to take in your calories and for the body to absorb it, and you don't have that jostling movement. So rarely is my purpose for a brick workout is to focus on trying to improve fitness. To me, in my opinion, it is more of a race day practice than it is anything else. Learning mantras that you can use to control your effort onto the bike. Because what typically happens is that as you come off the bike, most of the time, your cadence on the bike is going to be higher than the cadence that you're going to be running. And, you've gone from a non-impact sport to an impact sport where you have these fixed points where your feet are just attached to pedals. There's no impact there. You have fixed points onto the bike. And now you have more range of motion. You're engaging more muscles, more of the stabilizer muscles, since you're not fixed in position. And so you're trying to learn how to control that effort more effectively. And what happens is that people tend to get off the bike and they'll go at a higher effort that it then is sustainable for the duration of the run. So, what I tend to tell myself is that, hey, I want to be patient. If I feel like I'm running slowly, then chances are I'm running at the right pace or effort, uh, given the situation. You should almost feel like, man, I am running really, really slow. I can almost guarantee you that if you're under that scenario and you look at your watch, you're going to be fast. You're going to be running faster than your perceived speed is. And it happens to me all the time. So I'll get off the bike and I'll start to run. And it's like, man, I feel like I'm just kind of like, I'm really, really slow. And then I look down at my watch and I'm about a whole minute faster than what I perceive my speed to be or my pace to be. And so using these types of workouts is a good practice in trying to control that effort. You're trying to make that transition, and I want to say, like, try and work on your form as you've gone from the bike onto the run. You're reminding yourself, okay, I'm going to keep my arms down, keep my shoulders relaxed, swing my arms front to back, not side to side. How do my legs feel? Am I driving with my knees? Am I engaging my big toes? So I'm really focusing on that tripod foot impact onto the ground. Or is my back really tight? That tends to be some of the issues that I see with older athletes or athletes like myself who have degenerative backs, and we all experience this as we age to a certain extent. Some faster degenerations than others. So, what is your mobility like coming off of the bike and onto the run? How relaxed do you feel? Do you have that do you have that good rotation of the upper body as you've come off the bike and onto the run? These are all the things that I'm focusing on when I implement these types of workouts. Rarely do I have pace goals, cadence goals, distance goals when it comes to brick sessions. In previous episodes, I've said that I do my training plans in minutes, and that tends to be, and that's the same for brick sessions as well. So I hardly ever focus on distance unless we're talking about swimming, and then we're talking about yards and meters. All of my other workouts are in minutes. So I can tell you. So for this current training plan that I'm in right now, the block that I'm doing, my I have a weekly brick, and that's only one per week. And really, I implement it because I took such a long break from triathlon. So I took about a 4 year hiatus from the sport because I had a shoulder surgery and I had an elbow surgery that occurred right after it, and then I had frozen shoulder recovering from my shoulder surgery. And so it really kind of prohibited me from rebuilding my swim. And so, because I took such a long break, I wanted to implement brick sessions to kind of get that feel for the transition again. Um, and I felt like I lost that feel, even though I kind of knew what to expect. I wanted to kind of refresh my memory and refresh my body's memory on what that was going to feel like. And so one of my workouts, and it's always kind of the Saturday session where I have my long ride. I put a fairly short run right after that ride. So the way that I implement my training plan is, I think I think I'm biking like 5 times a week. I have 5 bike sessions and I have 5 run sessions. I have a weekly long run. I have 2 moderate runs and then 2 short runs. And I have those. The way that I develop those is I look at my weekly run volume and then I break out in proportion, how that run weekly volume is. So I want to say like my long run is probably about 30 to 35% of my weekly volume. My moderate runs are about probably 25%, and the balance of the 2 short runs. So for planning purposes, I just said, well, I'm just going to use one of my short runs as a brick run. And so that's the way that I implement. I don't add runs to my session, to my weekly plan just for bricks. I just reallocate one of those established runs that I have and turn that into the brick session. So I chose to use the short run because I don't want to waste a longer moderate run as a brick session, because it's too much volume and it's not the primary focus and reason that you implement a brick session into your training plan. You're just trying to get your feet under you. So if you're doing a bike and run brick, all you should really be focused on is how long does it take for me to get my run legs under me after being on the bike for as long as I was. Most of the time, that can take anywhere from like 10 minutes to 20 minutes at most. Rarely have I seen it take that long. But what I typically would do is like, okay, it takes you about anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes to get your legs under you. And then we're going to run the additional 10 minutes as like, run training, excuse me. So that's kind of the extent of the run. So my short runs have been anywhere between, I want to say it's like 34 minutes to 42 minutes. Right now they're at 42 minutes. And I'm training for an Olympic, which is actually going to be this coming weekend. So when I did my last sprint race, probably about a month ago, I increased my run volume as I was trying to focus on running 10Ks rather than the 5Ks, which were the sprint races that I was doing. So I wanted to increase my volume in preparation for that. So right now, my bike workouts, my bike volume is set such that my long ride is 2 hours. And it's been like that since I did my gravel race, earlier in the winter. So it was earlier in the year. I did a 25-mile gravel bike race. It was my first attempt at off-road biking. I've always been kind of a roadie, but I went ahead and I got a gravel bike from Obed Bikes, and wanted to become a more well-rounded cyclist and a more well-rounded coach. So I wanted to kind of learn gravel biking. So once I made that transition, I focused solely on the road. So I put the gravel bike into my shed, broke out my road bike, and set my long rides at 2 hours. I didn't start at less than that and grow it. It's been set at 2 hours for the whole time. The way that I set that was I came up with what I thought my ride would be for my bike portion would be for my Olympic race. And I added 45% to that. So I can purposefully overtrain on the bike and I can purposefully overtrain on the swim, but I don't want to overtrain as much on the run. Now, my races are fairly short this year. So we have sprint and Olympics. Once you start getting to the half iron and the full Ironman, you're not going to be running those types. You're not going to be running the full distance in training. You shouldn't be running the full distance in training. But when it comes to kind of the 10Ks and the 5Ks, the volume is fairly low and there's little risk unless you're kind of a newer athlete. But I've been doing this for, over a decade. So it's something that I'm used to doing, and I know my body's limits, and I feel like I can handle it. So what I'll do is I'll go out and I'll ride for the 2 hours, and then I get back to the car and I will put the bike on the car, quickly change into the run shoes, and then just immediately go out for, anywhere between the 34 to 42 minutes for my run. Now, I'm not trying to necessarily gain fitness. I'm trying to learn control. And for me, that is the primary focus of the brick workout is control. Trying to figure out what my pace should be off the bike within the first 10 minutes so that I don't overcook it and lose minutes later into the run. So I call it like going out too hot. I don't want to go out too hot. So I want to purposefully control that effort and let it build as I progress through the run. That, in my opinion, is the sole purpose of the brick workout. We're not trying to cover the distances of the race. I find that strategy it defeats the purpose and can end up getting you into that non-functional overreach phase of training where you're kind of like you're losing performance because you're kind of training a little bit too much. And newer athletes tend to do this. And I think because of the insecurity in knowing how to race, they want to prove to themselves that they can cover the distance. They will tend to say, okay, well, if my race is 25 miles on the bike and a 10K run, which is the distances for an Olympic race, then I have to do that in training, or I should do that in training. I would argue that that's not necessarily the case. It may be something that you don't want to do. So what I've been doing is I've been actually going over on my bike miles because there's less impact on my body from the bike than there is on the run. So I can overtrain on the bike. The reason is because you're still training the cardiovascular engine on the bike. It's the same cardiovascular system you're going to be using on the run, but there's no impact. So the benefits of becoming a stronger cyclist is going to far outweigh the benefits that you get from running more volume. And it's safer in terms of the stress that you put onto the body. So as a triathlete, if you're trying to find a way to become a better runner, I tend to focus on let's become the strongest cyclist that we can be, because we're not runners. So I had an athlete come to me one time, one that I've been working with forever, and he said, I want to be able to run a triathlon like I run like a 10K. I want to run it like a runner. And I thought about it for a while, and my response to him was, but you're not a runner. You're a triathlete. So our approach to running is different than the approach that we would use if we were just doing a run only race. So our focus is on trying to go out slower, not necessarily slower, because I think slower is a bad description of it. We want to go out easier. Easier doesn't necessarily mean slower. And so I've heard a lot of discussion in run groups. It's like, oh, well, you need to slow down. You need to slow down. You need to slow down if you want to go further. I don't necessarily agree with that statement. I think the point of it is you want to run easier. And this type of method was made more popular by Matt Fitzgerald in the 80-20 method that he developed, where 80% of your training volume is kind of the zone 1, zone 2 range, and then 20% is higher intensity, kind of like that high zone 3, zone 4. Rarely are you dipping into the zone 5. If you're an endurance athlete, if you're a track athlete, then yes, zone 5 is applicable. And I think that they misconstrued his discussion in terms of like running slower than running easier. We want to run easier. Doesn't necessarily mean that we run slower. Yes, it can be that, oh, in order to run easier, I need to run slower. But sometimes running faster is actually easier than running slowly. So it's all about perceived exertion, which is why I tend to use a lot of perceived exertion with some of my athletes, especially newer athletes, where they don't really have a good understanding on what it means to what it feels like to run easy. They're focused solely on pace, and they say, well, this pace is such that it should be easy. But if it's not easy, then you're using the wrong approach. You're still running hard. It's just you have a slow pace, maybe because you're a new runner, or you have a lack of strength, or you're still trying to build endurance. You're still trying to build up your cardiovascular engine. Whatever the reason may be, the pace is not in line with the rate of perceived exertion. So the brick work, and the reason that I'm talking about bringing it up like this, is that the brick workout should be primarily focused on RPE. Like I said, I never give an athlete, nor do I have any pace goals in my own training plan for brick sessions. I just say, I want to go out and I want to run zone 2 effort on the run off the bike. And that's the way that I approach it. And whether that zone 2 means that I'm running a 12-minute pace, or if I'm running an 11-minute pace, 10-minute pace, the pace is whatever it is, and can be a function of the environment in which I'm running. You know, if you're running in heavily shaded areas where there's lots of trees, your Garmin isn't going to have a very clear signal, so your pace may not be completely accurate as it is. But then you have, as we start to ramp up the heat and the humidity here, and I live in Virginia, and so anywhere between Virginia and Florida, anywhere into the southern states, as we start to ramp up the temperatures, your pace is going to decline anyway. And as the dew point climbs, that's going to be the result, is you're going to have slower paces. So what I want my athletes to say, I want to run easy, and the pace is whatever it is. Sometimes I recommend just removing pace from your watch so that you don't even see it, because I think that gets into your head a little bit more. And I know it has for me. I did my last Ironman race. So I did Ironman North Carolina. It's a half Ironman in Wilmington, and I did it about 4 years ago. I came off of the bike feeling pretty good. And I had a bunch of difficulties training for that race, some health issues that came up that was beyond my control, was not training related or anything like that. So I came off the bike and I looked at my pace and I looked at my heart rate, and I was like, this isn't sustainable. And I made that decision based purely on what the numbers were telling me, not how I was feeling. And I sabotaged my race that way. And I didn't have the performance that I wanted. And to this date, it's probably the worst 70.3 in terms of performance that I've ever done. Even though I feel like I trained fairly well given the challenges that I had for it. So one thing that I kind of would recommend is, hey, remove some of those metrics off of your watch, um, and just just have time, cumulative time, and distance, just so that you kind of know how far you've kind of gone. And even that is not necessary, because I base my training plans on minutes. So really, all I need is just the minutes that I've run, and most of my stuff is going to be out and back. So I just take that number, divide it by 2, and when I reach that, it's like, okay, how have I felt running on the out for my run? Do I feel like I can go a little bit faster on the way back? Did I run into a headwind? Was it more uphill going out than it was coming back? And I make those slight adjustments and turn around whenever the time is necessary in order to make it back fairly close to on time. So the main point that I'm trying to make is the purpose of the brick workout is not necessarily for fitness gains. It is to practice how you're going to execute your race. And it's calibrating. That's a great word, actually. Calibrating your body to be more in line with, to understand the rate of perceived exertions to what it feels like to run easy off the bike. Really, honestly, for a triathlon, let's say for for an Olympic, the race really doesn't start until that last 5K of the run. That's when your race starts. So everything that you've done up until then is moot. Really, your performance is going to be determined on how you did up to that point and how that last 5K is going to be. So the easier that you can run the first 5K, the greater the chances are that you'll be able to negative split the run, or you'll actually be able to progress the run where each successive mile is faster than the one before it. So let's go into the next topic of how and when to fit into the training plan. I typically won't implement brick sessions during the build, like the base phase of a training plan. Then I'm focused solely on just trying to build base fitness. So I'm not interested in really running on tired legs. I'm not interested in cycling, right after a swim. I'm just trying to build just a base level of fitness. And then once we kind of get past that, then you can kind of start to say, okay, now we're going to do some race specific training. And this is where the brick kind of sets in. This is more race specific, and this is not fitness specific. The one thing that I should probably mention is the duration of your brick. I made this mistake years ago when I was trying to get into long course racing, and I was building up from sprints and Olympics, and I was kind of dipping my toes into the half Ironman, and I was self coached at the time, and so I was fairly ignorant on how to do this well. And so what I was doing, I thought, well, hey, this time I'm going to go and I'm going to buy this book and I'm going to follow the training plan that's in the book, and maybe it'll kind of protect me from me, because I had the personality where it's like I was super insecure on my abilities, so I needed to prove to myself that I could cover the distance before race day. Now I don't need to know that. I know that if I can get close to the distance, then I know that I can go the distance in training. So if you're doing a full Ironman, half Ironman, Olympic, sprint's not necessarily the case. I would argue that you may not even need very many brick sessions for a sprint, because by the time you get your run legs under you, you're almost done with the run, honestly. So, maybe just a few of those brick sessions during your build phase as you get closer to the peak phase right before race day, might be a good time to implement it. So if you're following like, maybe let's say like a 12-week training plan for a sprint, I would say maybe right around like week 8, maybe 7 or 8, maybe start to introduce a couple short bricks in there. Do like your regular like long ride, and then do just a short run right off of the bike. No more than, let's say, like 20 minutes at most. Probably closer to the 10 to 15 minute is probably adequate. All you're looking for is just to trying to get your legs under you, your run legs under you, and then maybe just run a little bit extra from that. When you start getting to the Olympics, then, right around probably about the same time. But the duration of the run doesn't really change that much. I do it. I'm running 42 minutes off of the bike for mine, simply because it's my second short run, and for scheduling, that's what I'm kind of like quote unquote forced to do in order to get my run volume this is for scheduling purposes. It's not necessarily for fitness purposes or practice purposes for that matter, because I've been doing this long enough to kind of know how it's going to feel and how long it takes for me to get my run legs under me. Right now, I'm tracking at about 7 minutes. So 7 minutes after I get off of the bike and I start running, after that 7 minutes, I feel like I have my run legs under me. And I mean, I'm not the speediest runner. So that should put me, less than a mile, maybe closer to the half mile. Now, a little over half. So somewhere between the like around 0.75 miles is when I feel like I have my run legs under me. So running any more than that isn't necessary. So you could say, okay, well, if it takes 7 minutes, then run 10 minutes off the bike and you should be good. That is a completely valid approach to use. But for me, my scheduling and the way that I've got my training volume set, I just opted to just use my short run, and I run the full 42 minutes, even though I know it's not necessary. For half irons and full irons, I would argue that the approach is probably fairly close to the same. You might say that what I'm currently doing right now with 42 minutes off the bike is actually a good strategy to use for a half or a full Ironman. Not necessarily it's an Olympic. So it might be a little bit what I would call like overdoing it a little bit for an Olympic, but that's fine with me. I mean, so that's my approach, and that's how it's working for me. But it might be a good duration to run off of the bike for those types of distances, because you're going to be covering, 13.1 miles, or, a full marathon of 26.2, off the bike. So running, 42 minutes to 45 minutes in proportion to what you will be running on race day might be pretty close to reasonable. But again, it kind of depends on, how time strapped you are, what your training volume is like, your scheduling, your ability to, the demands that you have on your life outside of training. Are Saturday and Sundays really heavy, family time and a lot of activities. I have just one son that still requires my attention. And he's 16 years old, so he doesn't require that much of my attention. So I don't have a whole lot of demands on my time on Saturdays and Sundays more so. So all my brick sessions are set on Saturday, just for scheduling purposes. My Sundays are a lot busier, so I don't have the availability to train and put my long bike on Sundays. So that's the way that I've been rolling forward with my plan. So like I said, what you would typically do is right around the later stages of your build phase of your training plan is when you might start to shuffle things around and maybe implement a few brick sessions. it doesn't have to be, you don't have to do them like every weekend. If you say, hey, I'm only going to do them every other week, that's completely reasonable. But I think doing a brick session more than once a week is maybe a little bit excessive. Um, doing it twice, where maybe you're doing, a speed session on the bike, and you're just going to, do a quick transition and do like a faster pace run and have it called like your speed brick. To me, it doesn't seem reasonable, and injects a lot more risk into the training plan than what really needs to be there, given the purpose of why we use brick sessions to begin with. So really, I think, in my personal opinion, the better approach to use the brick is off of your long run, and really not necessarily off of any other bike sessions that you have throughout the week. I know that I have a long ride, a couple moderate rides, and some shorter rides in my weekly plan. And my bricks have always kind of been off of my long bike, and then do a shorter run after that. So point 4 is, what do you focus on during these types of workouts? And I've kind of touched on this a little bit so far for this. And it's all about, we're trying to fine tune pacing. We're trying to calibrate our body to see what it feels like to run easy, and to teach yourself patience. Find those little mantras that do work for you. For instance, in my last race, I did the Smith Mountain Lake triathlon. It was a sprint. I think we have a couple episodes back, Katie and I did race recaps, and that was the race that I recapped. The run was uphill going out, so it was an out and back run off of a fairly challenging bike course. And so I knew that the run was all uphill going out, and it was going to be downhill coming back. And so my mantra training for that effort was, just be patient. Be patient. Don't look at pace. The pace will come on the back half. And so that worked for me. It allowed me to try and, fight the urge to look at my watch for pace during the run of my race, because I knew that I wasn't going to be all that thrilled with the number that was staring me back from my watch, because I was purposefully running easier on the way out so that I could really make up the time on the way back. Because the minute or so that you gain from running harder is going to be greatly offset by the several minutes that you're going to lose by overcooking the run. And then the rate in which you slow down is going to skyrocket. And I've done this a bunch of times, so I know what it's like to overcook the run, to go out too hard, thinking, hey, I want to do this. I want to do well. This is the pace that I need to hit. Not thinking, not considering, how many minutes am I going to lose as my pace starts to decline throughout, because it's going to happen. And so you could make the argument that there's two ways to become a faster runner as a triathlete. And it's not necessarily just running faster, in training. You could make the case that, well, we just need to delay the decline in our pace. So it's not how fast you run, but how little you slow down. And so I think that kind of phrasing and that type of methodology really kind of stuck with me, and it helped me kind of understand the importance of patience coming off of the bike. And you're going to have adrenaline pumping and the crowd, because that's where you're going to see a bunch of the crowd, because you're coming out of the second transition and a lot of people there cheering on, and you're going to be feeling great. You're going to be feeling good to get off of the bike. And, the cadence that you've had on the bike is going to be a lot higher than the cadence that you had on the run. the lack of impact, you're going to come out of T2 kind of firing on all cylinders. And that is a great way to sabotage your run. And so we use these bricks to control that sabotage. So what do we focus on? So like I said, pacing and patience, potential risks of these workouts. One thing that I have done in my training is doing these long bricks. They are hard to recover from. You're talking, for me recently coming off of a 2 hour to 2 hour and 10-minute bike, then rolling on to, anywhere like upwards of a 42 to 45-minute run. Now you're talking about a 3-hour training session. Those are challenging to recover from, especially if you've structured your plan to where you have your long ride or your brick on Saturday and you have a long run on Sunday. That's a lot of damage done to the body to try and recover from on Saturday in order to run with good form and realize fitness gains on the Sunday for your long run. Even though it's zone 2, not all of my long runs are zone 2, and that's another kind of misconception, I think, is that your long runs have to be all zone 2 efforts. As I get closer to races and as my athletes get closer to races, we will use some structured runs, as our long runs, where we throw in some race pace intervals, maybe some tempo efforts, something with a little bit higher intensity. And those are really hard to do if you've dug such a deep hole from the day before from doing too long of a brick. As I said before, the purpose of the brick is to get your feet under you and control the effort and gain patience. And the longer that run is, the more challenging it's going to be to recover from in order to execute tomorrow's run. Now, if you have the ability and you have a flexible schedule, it might be worth it to say, hey, I'm going to have my long ride on Saturday with a brick run, but I'm actually going to do my long runs on Wednesday. So I kind of break up the damage to the body, and I'm not like, it's not necessarily like a weekend warrior kind of mentality where you just kind of go out and bury yourself on Saturday and Sunday, and then you're required to use that Monday, day off. But if you don't bury yourself on the weekend, you don't need the day off on Monday. Maybe just go with a little bit of an easier run. So if you have that ability and you can say, I'm going to do my long runs on Wednesday, which means that you can run better with better form and recover properly for the long for the brick session that you're going to have on Saturday. And maybe that sets you up for Sunday, is maybe turn Sunday into like an endurance swim, where you do some longer intervals in the pool. You're using more upper body than you are lower body in the pool. Non-impact is still stress, it still tires you out. Because if you come home, after anybody who comes home after a 3K to, a 3.5K swim and say that they don't feel tired, I would question, okay, well then how hard are you swimming and how long of breaks are you taking between your intervals? Because you're going to be tired. The muscles are going to be sore. Your back muscles are going to be sore. Chances are you're not necessarily swimming with perfect form. So you're going to feel some heat in those shoulders and some stress in the biceps and triceps and the forearms. As you flex, many people are going to be flexing that wrist a little bit too much during their catch. So, even swimming has some impact and some damage on the body. So structuring it to where you have a Wednesday long run, recover for a few days, still doing stuff, but not like, crazy stuff. You maybe have your long run on Wednesday. You may have a short, maybe like a zone 2 ride on Thursday, maybe a swim, maybe kind of like maybe a speed session in the pool on Friday, and then that'll flow right into a Saturday brick, and then more of an endurance swim on Sunday. So that's something to consider. If you can break up that volume like that. If you don't have that ability, which many people don't, then you're kind of forced. You're stuck doing long rides on Saturdays and long runs on Sundays, or vice versa. It depends on how much time you have. If you have the ability to do a long ride on Sunday, then I say take it. The reason is because those brick sessions are going to kind of teach you, how does it feel to run on tired legs? But going from your long ride on Saturday into a long run on Sunday, you're doing a lot longer of a run on tired legs, which I think does you more harm, because you're more inclined to be running with poor form. And so, the damage that's going to be done to your body is going to be far greater than if you split it out and you reversed it to where you said, I'm going to do my long run on Saturday, and then the non-impact kind of thing on do the long run on Saturday, the long ride on Sunday. You don't need to teach your body to run on tired legs. To me, you're going to have more of a mental battle than you are going to have a physical battle when it comes to racing, and especially mid to long course racing. Yes, you're going to be tired. Triathlon is hard. Cycling is hard. Running is hard. Doing them for long periods of time is hard. So what we do is we train for it, and we accumulate fitness and we accumulate fatigue. But if you think that you're going to go into race day thinking that it's going to be quote unquote easy, then you've trained too hard. I would argue that your training plan has been too aggressive, because that means that you've been training at race pace and race efforts. And so now you're kind of going into race day kind of overcooked because you want it to feel easy. It's not going to feel easy. This is hard stuff that we do. But you only have to do it once, and you got to do it on that day. And you're going to have to do it with the body that you have on that day. Regardless of how training has gone, your training could have been absolutely perfect. And you get to race day and you just not have the legs. And, you just don't feel fresh. You don't feel popped and excited and ready. And you just may not have it. Or you may have something where it's just like, oh, I got in the water and my goggles leaked. And then, I had to fight that. And then I got on the bike and I got a flat tire, or I dropped a nutrition bottle. And then, I had to deal with all that. And there was too many people on the course and it was hard to navigate. So I was kind of stuck, trying to, distance myself from the person in front of me so I don't get flagged for drafting. And so I couldn't really get into the flow of the bike. And then I got onto the run, and, I think I may have overcooked my nutrition on the bike, and I felt kind of like sluggish and jostly, and I had some digestive issues and some GI distress. And so that's your day, but your training went perfect. Those are the types of scenarios that we have to deal with. And, your body doesn't care that it's race day. All it knows is that it's, Saturday or Sunday, and you're asking your body to do this, but, it doesn't say, well, today is special. Your body doesn't say, hey, today is special, so I'm going to perform better than I have, all this other time because it's my special day. It doesn't care. So, trying to find ways to recover during training, like we've done previous podcasts before on how to implement recovery strategies, and, breaking up that training is one way of doing it, like I just discussed. But the implementation of brick sessions puts a new spin on the body's ability to recover from the damage that you do to it. Which is why you don't need to say, hey, I'm going to go out for a 4-hour ride. Let's say that I'm training for a half Ironman. I'm going to go out for a 4 to 4.5 hour ride, and then I'm going to run 2 hours off the bike. Now you've had a 6 hour day. And so what does that leave you with tomorrow? Chances are tomorrow is your long run. What kind of quality run are you going to be able to do with that? And you're going to be challenged. And if you do that enough, you're digging a massive hole that you're going to have to find your way out of before race day. And I would argue that any kind of taper period that you're going to implement, whether it's just, a week, which is what probably most people would do, is not going to be sufficient to for you to reach your full potential on race day, because you dug some holes, and those are pretty deep holes, because you felt the need that I need to go out and prove to myself that I could cover this distance, and I could do this on a tired body. So there are no questions that I have on race day. If you're racing and you have no questions of your abilities to complete the race, then I would say you maybe trained a little bit too much, maybe trained a little bit too hard, because I know that there's not a single race that I've done where I haven't had that thought cross my mind, just at least once. It's like, man, do I really have it today? And am I able to run this entire run without feeling the need to walk, or am I mentally weak today? So I'm just not even. I'm in a really dark place right now, and I don't know if I can do this. It doesn't matter how much training you've done; those thoughts come, and so there's a mental aspect to endurance sports, and the brick session is one way to help strengthen the mental aspect of race preparation. Like I said, you find these little mantras. And he's like, hey, I've done this before. It's all good. We're just going to be patient. If it feels too hard, then chances are I'm going too hard. If it feels just right, then I'm also going too hard. If I feel slow and I feel like I could run faster without much effort, then chances are you're going the right pace. You're going at the right level of effort. So the ability to recover is, the primary issue and the primary source of risk for brick sessions. The last one that I've got here is, what are the benefits of a brick workout? And I've kind of alluded to it. Is it's a confidence booster. You how it's going to feel when you don't have your run legs under you and you want to run harder and you want to run faster because you have a pace in mind that you want to hit, but you don't have your run legs under you yet. So trying to hit your goal run pace within the first 10 minutes of the run during a triathlon is a huge risk to you. Because you're not allowing your body to kind of settle into it. So that might be another little mantra that you can implement. It's like, hey, as soon as you get off the bike and you go out of T2 and you grab that first little cup of water off of the aid station, chances are that's where it is. They always have one right there. You grab a little water, drink, grab another little water, dump on the head. And then you go out and it's just like, hey, patience. I've done this before. It's all good. Run easy. If it feels hard or if I feel like I'm going the right pace, I need to back off. And so, that to me provides a lot of confidence, because now you're mentally stronger. You're in the moment. And you're not thinking about, hey, what's this going to feel like, at mile 7.5, if you're doing a half Ironman and you're kind of like halfway through, you're on the other side of the halfway point of the run. You're just like, man, I still got all these miles to go. You develop these little things and these little confidence boosts. It's just like, hey, I've done this before. I know what this is like, and I've executed this plan well. My nutrition strategy has been on point. I didn't go too hard off the bike, so I know that I'm in a good spot. And I think that's one of the primary benefits of brick training is just that confidence boost and the ability to find these little mantras that are going to work for you to keep you under control as you make that transition. So confidence. The second one is going to be being able to dial into pace versus effort, and totally disregarding pace, I think, for at least the first mile. So if you're doing anything with an Olympic or higher, where you're running, a 10K, half marathon, or a full marathon, I wouldn't even look at pace until you've crossed past the 2 mile mark. For a sprint, you have to kind of look at pace a little bit more because you've only got 3.1 miles, and so you really have to be a lot more present, I think, for that. But the intensity is a lot higher, the effort is a lot higher, and so you have, I think, in my mind, you have less risk of the consequences of going out too hard when it comes to a sprint. Because like I said, by the time you get your run legs under you, you're probably about halfway through the run anyway, or you're quickly approaching, that 1 mile mark, and you just have 2 miles left. And, you can hold on for 2 miles. Most, I would say that's probably mostly the case. So really kind of understanding pacing and effort, confidence, and your body's not going to be surprised. And so I would say that the third benefit to brick training is that when you're reconciling what your body is telling you and how your mind is interpreting that, you're not going to be, quote unquote, surprised. It's like, man, this feels weird. I've been sitting on this bike for anywhere between 12 miles to 112 miles, and now I'm starting to run, and this feels really, really weird. By doing the brick sessions, you kind of alleviate that, quote unquote, surprise. So it's just like, oh, well, I felt this in training. I knew it was coming. And I have my mantras that I know to control my effort. And so, you can be a little bit more in control. And control is the key to multi-sport racing. There's nothing that's better than being in control, and kind of understanding, what effort feels like. And like I said, the numbers are what they are. Your power numbers off of the bike, your cadence off the bike, is what it is. But, there's going to be a lot of other factors that are going to contribute to either the best performance or the poor performance when it comes to interpreting those metrics. What were the hills? What were the hills like? What was the race course like? What was the condition of the roads? What's the temperature? How did your nutrition strategy go? All that stuff plays into what those power numbers are. What's the wind like? Am I riding with a tailwind, or am I riding with a headwind? What's my strategy for combating headwinds? What do I do if I face a tailwind? How do I change my position to maximize that benefit and that kind of, quote unquote, gift that you get from the tailwind? So these that kind of boils it down into how I perceive brick workouts, how I implement them in my plan, and how I implement them in my athlete plans, and just some things to consider. I'm not saying that this is going to work for everyone. You can opt and figure out if this is kind of what you like and what kind of works for you. But that kind of does it. So I haven't had Katie here to try and rein me in or add to the conversation. So I apologize. Just hearing me just kind of drone on for the whole time. But Katie is coming back, and we will be back in 2 weeks. with episode 10. I'm not quite sure what the topic is going to be, but I know that Katie is coming off of her race. I'll be coming off of a race. So maybe the next episode is going to be a bit of a race recap for us, because these are both of our A races. So she just did the Vermont City full marathon, which was an A race for her. I've got the Jamestown Olympic race in Williamsburg, Virginia this weekend. So this is my A race. And so maybe that's what the next episode will be, a little bit of a race recap. So again, thank you guys for listening, and thank you for joining in on our discussion on what the role of the brick workout is. From the last episode, I'll change my position here, sit in the seat. We talked about the Facebook, the private Facebook group that we created for the podcast. I saw that we had some interest in the site, so we got some members that are coming in. So it would be great if we could kind of build this community out a little bit more. So please go out to Facebook and look for the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast group. All you got to do is answer one simple question, and then we'll let you in and we'll start building this community. But this is a great place for you to get additional content from both Katie and I, for interactions with other athletes, posing questions on topics for future podcasts. This is a great avenue for that. And so please go out and check us out on that site and ask to join the group. Also, if you're listening to us, and this is on the outro, but if you're listening to us on Spotify and iTunes, please leave us a rating. Go out and leave us up to a 5-star rating. Comments are welcome. We do check them out. But use and filling out a rating kind of helps others find us as well, and we can kind of broaden the reach of the podcast, and other people will be able to enjoy the benefits and hear from Katie and I as well, and we'll be able to grow this community. So please go out to, if you are on Spotify and Amazon, leave us up to a 5-star review. It is greatly appreciated. Until then, I'm Coach Justin, head coach of Tabula Rasa Racing and your co-host of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. And thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Have a good night. Listening to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. Like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Feel free to leave us up to a 5-star review on iTunes and Spotify, because leaving a review really helps others like you find us. Visit the podcast website for other episodes of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast at enduranceathletejourney.buzzsprout.com. Have questions or comments about the podcast? Send Coach Justin and Katie an email at theenduranceathletejourney@gmail.com. For all things coaching, visit Coach Katie at fuel2run.com and Coach Justin at tabularasaracing.com. Again, thank you for listening to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast, and remember to find joy in the journey.